What's up, Panda dudes? Peter Von Panda here. Hey, I want to show you a Glycine watch. I've had this one a while, but I've never shown it to you, and so I want to bust it out here and take a little peek at it because it's a great watch, and in so many ways, I really like this. Now, I want to say this came out in 2012. This is a Glycine. It's a limited edition, Pvd coated, obviously in black. It's 48 millimeters, and it's a KMU48, as you can see there. And KMU, if I know my German correct, it's like Kriegsmarine Uhren. And that stands for, Uhren is watches, I believe, and Kriegsmarine stands for essentially Navy. So it's a Navy-style watch. And when I think of German Navy-style watches, I think of U-boat. And in some ways, this has some similarities to the U-boat watches, which I'll get into. I got it because I like big watches at 48 millimeters. This is a large watch. Some of you may not like this. In 2012, I think, 2013-ish when this came out, larger watches were the thing. I still like larger watches. 48 millimeters and smaller are kind of my sweet spot, 44 to 48. I think this is really good looking. Yes, it's a little bigger, but the KMU watch here is pretty thin. Man, I should have gotten you some numbers on this, but I wanted to say it's only like 12.5 millimeters thick. So it's actually a fairly thin watch. So when I put it on my wrist, it doesn't feel really, really bulky. Yes, it's got a large kind of pancake shape because of how wide it is, but it wears nicely. It kind of disappears a little bit because of all black construction. The Pvd coating is awesome. And one of the reasons I wanted to bust this out is black is in. I showed you my black Shinola Runwell. And in fact, this watch band is essentially brand new because I actually had to put this one back on because I don't wear it with this band. I wear it with a really light tan canvas strap because I think that light strap and the black case really contrasts nicely, and in this watch it really works. Now, everything about this is pretty nice. You can see here, just blacked out, murdered out. This black band here, even the threading is, I think, it kind of looks like it's white. We could argue about color here, but it's actually like black, I think. Maybe like but it has a little bit of a shine to it. I'll actually call it like a gray. Let's split the difference. It's like a darkish gray, but it's in a different sheen, so it really stands out without being really, really obvious. It's certainly not as light as the elements on the dial here. I believe it uses a Unitas ETA 6498-2 movement. As you can tell, this is not an automatic movement, it's a mechanical movement. And now, the thing about this, and I showed you on my other Glycine, my F104, sapphire crystal front, flat, a lot of weight to it, large crystal. But on the back on the Glycines, I believe it's a mineral crystal. Sounds a little different. I don't know why they don't use sapphire on the back. Someone else might be able to tell me. Maybe it's just for weight. It's probably not a problem because obviously when it's pressed against your wrist, it's not going to get beat up. I don't even know that I've wound this in a long time. It doesn't have a screw down crown. I think you just wind it up here. And as you can see, there we go. Subdial with the seconds hand is rolling there. You have these sword style hands here and kind of a leaf shaped hand for the subdial. Just beautiful. I love this watch. I got it a long time ago. It wasn't brutally expensive. The cool thing about Glycine is that if you're in the know, you recognize it as a quality Swiss entry level brand. But if you're not a watch guy, it's kind of a brand that you wouldn't recognize and doesn't scream Rolex or other kind of more snooty brands, in my opinion. I'm not busting on any of them. Rolex is beautiful watches, Megas, everything else, but it's just a brand that's a little bit more of kind of your unknown musician or that little dive bar that you like. It's just something where you've got to be a little bit more into the culture to recognize the name. And I like it. Kind of like, Glycine or Longines or Frederic Constant. Just names that aren't necessarily household names in the watch world. Now, a couple of things that I'll tell you about it. This PVD coating is fantastic. It's held up well. Glycine logo on the crown. Everything about it is just a really high quality. As you can see here, the lugs curve down just a little bit. They end up below the back of the case, which is kind of just a little bold. You know, there's some information on the back here. Limited edition. Now, the limited edition here doesn't. It wasn't a limited edition because it was a commemorating anything in particularly. You know, they just made a few variations on this watch. Some with the subdial down here, some with the subdial in different colors, and they just made a limited run of it. And this one is a limited run of 250, and you can see it's kind of stamped or blasted in the side there. And I think they also put it down here. No, I guess I put the serial number down there. So you've got that. Now, the other thing I should have mentioned about this movement here, it's been rock solid, and I think it's a 46-hour power reserve. So you wind this sucker up, and you don't really have to deal with it for a couple days, which is kind of nice. But kind of smoked mineral crystal glass there, really beautiful movement. You can see everything rolling there. You know, and you can see the heart of the watch beating. Really nice. No blued screws or anything, which is kind of nice because all that smoky glass kind of makes it all look a little steampunkish. Anyway, beautiful watch. I really love it. Nice. You can hear you winding that mainspring there. I wanted to get into the dial, and this is where I mentioned, you know, Kriegsmarine, a Navy style watch here, not unlike U-boat. And one of the similarities that it has, which I really love about this watch, is that you can see it's kind of like a sandwiched dial. So you've got this big black dial, this face on it, and then you basically have kind of this luminescent, like super luminova, like indiglow like disc behind it, pressed up right against it. Now, it might be a little hard to see here. I will try to control the glare. But if we really get into it, you can see that there's a little depth to each of the numbers. And each of the pips at the hour mark. And even the subdial is basically kind of sunk. Now, because that black disc portion of the dial isn't very thick, it's not a super exaggerated effect. I have seen watches where they do a very similar thing, and I think the disc is thicker, so it has a little bit more depth to it. So this is a little bit more subtle. And one of the giveaways is if you look at that 6, how it doesn't cut out all the way. It's kind of like a stencil for spray painting. And the reason they can't cut it out all the way is then you'll have that little center black part of the 6 will just fall out unless it's applied down. So you get a little bit more of this where all the numbers that need to be presumably like laser cut out, you've got to do it in a way that all the parts that you need in the black disc are still held together. Okay, now it just creates a really awesome effect. I know some other watch companies that do it. Panda is very common name that does it pretty much in all of their watches. U-boats do it in some of their watches, which is really nice, and even the TCMs, the Terra Cielo Mar watches, which I also really like, the Italian brand, do it on some of their new watches. And it wasn't on my TCM watch, but on some of their new ones they do it, and they look really awesome. And I'm kind of saving up my money to try to buy one of those TCM watches and check that out as well. Now, the really cool thing that this does for you is, one, it creates a cool depth effect, but then secondly, that disc behind it, this, which is kind of looks a little bit like a slightly lime green effect, means that this thing has wicked glow in the dark features. I mean, it just, because everywhere that's cut out in the black ultimately works like a stencil, that whole disc in the back just kind of shines right through. So I'll roll in some footage of what this sucker looks like in a completely blacked out room. But the one thing you'll notice is that, you know, over other watches, is that this thing shines in the dark like no other watch I've ever seen. These watches are not fetching a lot of money, and unfortunately that I think is just a shame, but it's a great opportunity for people that want something that's a little more unique, that you know, is a really high quality piece. Maybe you wanted a mechanical watch in your collection. Maybe you've had automatics. You just want kind of a proven, reliable movement. Great buckle here, PVD coated as well. And something that's a little bit more outdoorsy, a little more sporty, but something that is a little more off the beaten path, but looks great and is unique. And I think this Glycine KMU48 and the other KMU48s are really fantastic. You can get these, from what I've seen, in the $500 or $600 range, which is absolutely fantastic. I mean, there are a lot of watches that you can spend that much on a Casio or a Citizen, and I think in many cases don't have kind of the prestige and the exclusivity of having a limited edition watch, or something with a name that, albeit relatively unknown, is still a premier name. That Glycine logo on there is applied. It looks like silver, but everything else is just really, really nicely done. You've got 24-hour numbers on that inner portion of the dial, and kind of a really minimal bezel up at the top, but just a fantastic watch. I really love wearing this. Wanted to share it with you. You know, like I said, it's not commemorating anything specific, just all-round good watch, and in a limited edition form that I really like. Peter von Panda, out!